So until we are taught to make money, we won't reach true financial freedom. That's what part of this course is introducing you to. So the very first thing is you got to inventory yourself. What are your core competencies? That means what can you do well? So I have a neighbor who's a personal coach. And so I met with him a few years ago right after I started work here. And when I started work, I was the third year intern coordinator, meaning I was over all third year, and the business school coordinator. And so I sat down with him one time and we were going through it, and he said, "You are not an administrator." I said, "What do you mean I'm not an administrator?" He said, No, don't get me wrong. You can do it, but it sucks the life out of you. Okay? So that's not my core competency. I've got a guy that works with me right now. He's a former business student a couple of years ago. His name is Steve Flores. And he is a fabulous administrator. And I mean, the minute something needs to be captured or organized or whatever, he's already on it before I could even think about it. So you have core competencies. Those are things that really come easy to you and that you do really well. And sometimes you think, oh, no, that stuff's easy. Everybody can do that. Well, if you look around, probably not everybody can do it. It's just you're so gifted in it, you don't realize how gifted you are. So take that inventory. What are your core competencies? What's your personality? We've all heard Andrew Womack said that he was an introvert. He couldn't talk to people, and yet God pulled him out of that. So just because you have a personality a certain way doesn't mean God's not going to call you into something else. However, how many of y'all know Connie that used to run the coffee shop? Yeah. How many of you, does Connie know your name? Yep. She knows everybody's name and virtually what everybody drinks, if they drink the same thing, right? That's one of her core competencies. I've never seen anybody that can do it the way she does it. Make you feel like you're the only one. But yet she knows everybody's name. And it's not because she can read real well off of your badge, like me. I know your name because your badge is turned around right. If it's turned around wrong, I don't know your name. So you have a tolerance for risk. What is your tolerance for risk? Some people have more tolerance than others. My investors out in New York, not the 90-year-old, but his younger partner who's in his 60s, he built a home health agency over, I think it was 5 states, and so he's a very well-to-do. He invests in property all across the nation. But my brothers are in development. That means they take a piece of ground and they develop it, put streets, utilities, all, and then they sell it. And my investor out of New York wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. He said, that's too risky for him. So even though he's made a lot of money, done a lot of things, there's certain things he won't do because they're too risky. So you have a risk tolerance that other people don't. Okay? So take that inventory. What is that? Dealing with difficult people. Some you can do it. Maybe you can't do it. There are some people who are gifted that can do it. And I don't mean by dealing with them as in you can overpower them. You can pin them on the ground and get them to say uncle. That's not what I'm saying. And then motivation. What is your motivation for doing things? One of the things that this class is that we're trying to discover in you is what is your true motivation for wealth? And if your true motivation for wealth aligns with God's motivation, which is what? Building His kingdom, establishing His covenant. If that's your motivation, then you can be assured that that desire within you for wealth is a godly desire. If it's something other than that, I would check your motives. Okay? So remember, you take value to the marketplace. Think of the example of me and my daughter. I have more value to bring to the marketplace than she does at this moment. Now that's in certain areas. If your need was artistic, drawing, or something like that, she would bring infinitely more value than I would. because she has a gift in drawing. Okay, so she can bring that value to the marketplace where I couldn't. I saw this today and I liked it. So a bar of iron costs $5. Made into horseshoes, it's worth 12. Made into needles, it's worth 3,500. Made into balance springs for watches, it's worth over 300,000. Your own value is determined also by what you are able to make of yourself. Let that sink in. The question we always get is, where do I start? I don't have much to invest. Start with yourself. Invest in yourself. You're going to get the greatest return out of that. So you have to spend time brooding and hovering before you make a move. 50% of accomplishing anything is just taking the first step. But if you spend the time praying in the Spirit over things, that first step is going to really be in the right direction, rather than being impulsive and just taking a step to take a step. You have an advantage over the world because you have the wisdom of God, the mind of Christ. You have the Holy Spirit as a teacher, a comforter, someone who knows what's coming and can guide and direct you. So God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Using all its vast resources in the service of God and man, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Please, please, please notice, we must be fruitful, then we multiply. If you aren't fruitful in what you're doing, then what you're multiplying is not good. Right? That's why invest in yourself. So building the first X can be done in a series of steps, but building the second and third X are not quite a straight shot. Instead, there are many different routes and tolls to building wealth at this level. Billy Epperhart built his wealth investing in residential real estate. Then he moved on and he bought some franchises and things like that. Paul Milligan built his wealth in building an aerospace company. Two different tracks. Your track will be different than your neighbor's track. I'm in real estate. My grandfather was in real estate. My mom's in real estate. My brothers are in real estate. My son's in real estate. But my track is different than my brother's, different than my mom's. Because I have a different risk for tolerance. I have a different core competency. So even though we're very similar, we're still very different. I have different relationships now than my brothers do. So I have different opportunities than they ever did because of the relationships. So you have different relationships than the next person. Those relationships could open doors to opportunities for you. So take time to pray over your plans. What is the Lord telling you? That's the hovering. Okay? So now we're going to move on to session 7. So what kind of laws does God use when it pertains to wealth? You think there are laws to wealth? It's kind of hard in a grace Bible school to talk about law, right? But there are laws. We're all right now submitting to the law of gravity. I haven't seen one of y'all float away yet. Although I know that my teaching could bring you to that height, but you just hadn't done it. So thank you for obeying the law. When you read God's laws of wealth, what comes to mind? Obedience. What? I can't hear you. Giving. What's that? Reaping and sowing, or sowing and reaping? Multiplication. Awesome. So once you have put yourself in the position to start building wealth, there are 9 laws you can follow that can take you all the way there. Remember, when something's underlined, there's probably a blank in your notes. So these laws of wealth pertain to the second and third X's. Deuteronomy 8:17 and 18. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. So the first 4 laws are called God's laws. They specifically have to do with partnering with God. How are you preparing yourself to partner with God? So the first X, law of wealth. Note there are laws of wealth at each X. The first law is the law of change. You've heard the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing except expecting a different result. That's why you need to be open to change. So then he spoke a parable to them. No one puts a piece from a new garment on an old one. Otherwise, the new makes a tear, and also the piece that was taken out of the new does not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, or else the new wine will burst the wineskins and be spilled, and the wineskins will be ruined. But new wine must be put into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And no one, having drunk old wine, immediately desires new, for he says the old is better. So where there is new wine, we must offer God a new wineskin. New wine may be new opportunity, new wisdom, new skills. But sometimes you have to change your wineskin, change your thinking. So the new wineskin we offer God is a renewed mind. We need to think differently. One of the things that we hammer in business school is not so much that you're coming to learn the nuts and bolts, which you'll learn some of that. Primarily what we teach you in business school is to think deeper. We give you some tools, principles to think deeper. It means we must have a spirit ready to change. We hear renewed mind a lot in Christian circles. How would you define a renewed mind? Remember, when I ask those rhetorical questions and there's a big box on your page, take a minute and whatever God's impressing upon you, write it down, capture it. So you may have heard this story. So one day there's a guy sitting on the shore watching a man fish. All of a sudden the guy hooks a big fish. He fights it. He pulls it in. Takes it off the hook. He throws it back. Guy watches him for a little while longer. Hooks another big one. Reels it in. Bigger than the last. Pulls it in, unhooks it, throws it back. And he does this time and time again. The guy on the shore is going, what is wrong with him? And then finally the guy hooks another fish. Now it's a little bitty one. Guy brings it in, and he keeps it. So the guy on the shore says, I'm gonna find out what the deal is. So finally the fisherman comes in the shore and said, look, I've been watching you all afternoon. You hook these huge fish, and then you let them go. And you work them. You hook 10 of them, and you let them all go. And then you catch a couple of these little ones, and you keep them. What is the deal? The guy said, well, I only have a 10-inch skillet. So sometimes we can't take the new wine or the bigger fish because we only have a 10-inch skillet. Your thinking is not big enough, broad enough. God's bringing something to your door that is beyond you. Exactly. If it was within your realm of possibility, then it's probably not God. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have some skills, some relationships, some pieces of it. But if you could do it all on your own and didn't need God, then it's probably not God. So you need to take inventory of yourself and determine, do I need a bigger skillet? You must be willing to leave what is familiar and comfortable. How many of y'all did that to get here to Charis? Some of us more than others. But most Charis students, in one way or another, did leave a familiar or comfort to get here. So I commend you. You have operated in the law of change. But don't stop there. Is there an area of finance and wealth building where you have to learn something new, where you had to learn something new and it was uncomfortable, that you've already gone through? What is it? I told you all that before I came here, I operated in fear when it came to investments and that sort of thing on a general level. Now, I did a few things, and I told you all about that. But I had a prophecy a couple of years before I came here, and God was, I beg you to walk in your anointing. And I didn't understand that until I got here and began to break some paradigm and realize that skillet that I was working with is only a 10-inch. But what God was bringing to my door was much larger. So I had to get rid of the 10-inch skillet, and I've been preparing the larger skillet. Isaiah 1:19, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. A lot of people are willing. Oh, Lord, bless me. Bless me with an abundance, more than enough. And so he says, okay, there's a field full of potential. Go work it. Oh, no. I'm just waiting for the blessing. Willing and obedient, you'll eat the good of the land. So every change begins with an ending. Most assuredly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. If you don't put the seed in the ground, it will not germinate, it will not grow. But it always has the potential in it. You can set it on the shelf and leave it for years, and the minute you bring it off the shelf and put it into some soil, it will germinate and grow. The potential is there. So there must be a decision to change. D means from, scission means cut. You see that? So when I make a decision to change, it means I'm cutting from where I am. I cut from the old to embrace the new. I talked to you all about, I'm in the midst of this change. I feel like I'm swinging. I'm holding on to this whatever it is, this ring, and I've gotten to about as far as it can go, and I have to release it. to catch the new ring that's coming up in front of me that I can't even quite see yet. So I got to cut from what's familiar, what's comfortable, so that I can reach forward and grab what God's bringing to my door. So, what areas of life need to be changed or cut away in your life? So, law of change. Second law is the law of wisdom. Proverbs 24, 3 and 4. Through skillful and godly wisdom is a house, a life, a home, a family built. And by understanding it is established on a sound and good foundation. And by knowledge shall its chambers of every area be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So what sticks out to you in that verse? The verse lists three primary qualities for profitable enterprise: knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. So, don't just ask what something costs, ask what it is worth. I say, John, I found a gold mine. You can dig up all you want. I say, John, go get a shovel. John says, you know how much they want for shovels? Somebody needs to change their mindset. I can't bring a fish in that big. I only have a 10-inch skillet. You know what they want for skillets? Ecclesiastes 10:10. Since a dull axe requires great strength, sharpen the blade. That's the value of wisdom. It helps you succeed. So we start building knowledge, then gain understanding. Continue to walk in that understanding, we develop wisdom. Some of you, this class has been knowledge. You've never been exposed to some of these concepts before. Some of you, you've kind of known about them. But this is helping sharpen that blade, giving you a little more knowledge. You're beginning to get understanding, so that you can walk out of here, apply that understanding, and then you can gain wisdom. 1 Kings 3, 5 and 9. God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Solomon replied, so give me the wisdom I need to rule your people. Ask for wisdom. 1 Kings 4:29, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's a perfect example of how money is attracted, not pursued. By applying himself to knowledge and then asking and walking in the wisdom of God, Solomon moved forward into the place of great wealth. You will hear that over and over, that money is attracted, not pursued. In business, if you truly have a good business idea matched with a good business plan, your money is going to be easy to find. Money is looking for profit. But you need a good idea, a good plan, and a good business model. Luke 19:44, and they will dash you down to the ground, you Jerusalem, and your children within you, and they will not leave you one stone upon the other, all because you did not come progressively to recognize and know and understand from observation and experience the time of your visitation. That is when God was visiting you, the time in which God showed himself gracious toward you and offered you salvation through Christ. You did not come to progressively recognize and know and understand from observation and experience. Sometimes we have God opportune moments in our lives and we don't recognize them. We don't come progressively to recognize and know and understand from observation and experience that God is doing things for us. So the observation stage is the knowledge. The experience stage is the understanding. You're never going to develop understanding unless you observe and experience. And you can't observe and experience until you jump in the game. Remember, ready, aim, aim, aim. If you don't get in the game, you're not going to learn. Now, for me, I was in the game on one side of it because the investors that I was managing for let me manage as if I was an owner. So I did learn a lot, but it still wasn't my money at risk. So there's still some experience that I didn't gain from that, but I did gain a lot. So what can you learn from Solomon's experience? Or example, excuse me. Next law, the law of connection. So we've got the law of change, the law of wisdom, now the law of connection. So Felix Dennis said, I was put on the earth to get rich, to collect all the money that already had my name on it, and then give it all away. The law of connection helps us build wealth. God gives us the power to get wealth by offering us divine connections and kairos moments. I told you all about the example of the one business group that they needed connections to get into the power plants, the refineries, things like that. And they weren't sure where they were going to get it. And there was a gentleman in first year who had retired from that industry, and he could call any of the decision makers at any of those refineries and plants, and they would take his call. That's a divine connection. That's why we say that you have some gifts and things, but you have certain connections that you have that others don't have. That's God has brought you some divine connections and is and will be bringing you divine connections. Some of those connections are sitting next to you here in the school. Sometimes, there's there is a group of students that come to business school that have been in business for years and never know why, or in the beginning don't know why they're in business school. And then as they're in there, they make a connection either with an instructor or a student or somebody like that that becomes a divine connection for them. Because you are precious in my sight, you have been honored, and I have loved you. Therefore, I will give men for you and people for your life. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. So what stands out in that passage? Because you are precious in my sight, you have been honored. I have loved you, therefore I will give men for you and people for your life. Connections. I will give men for you and people for your life. God has people for your life you've never met and has experiences for you that you've never experienced. When God brings people and experiences across your path, we call those divine connections. Is there anyone in your life who you know is a divine connection or has been? Anybody? You can identify that person at that time in my life was a divine connection to take me to the next level or the next thing that God had for me. The opposite of that is true. You are a divine connection for someone. So sometimes when you go into a room or into a situation or a place, it may be for others to meet you, because you may be their divine connection. So pray for divine connections each day. As you come across people throughout your day, look for those divine connections. Most divine connections are only 2, 3, or 4 steps away from you at this very moment. So maybe it's not the person sitting next to you, but it's somebody they know. Or somebody that a friend of theirs knows. Divine connections propel us from the second X to the third X. They will help us impact the world. Have you been open to and look for divine connections in Kairos moments? Remember, you plan your way, but God, orders your steps. So, if you're willing and obedient, sometimes that obedience means you need to take a step farther to the right or farther to the left to get you to that divine connection that God has for you. Next law of stewardship. Implementing the law of stewardship is when we do our half and God does His. I would prefer this to say when we do our part and God does His. When we steward what God has given us, we master our money. Jeremiah 52, 31 and 30 through 34. Now it came to pass that in the 37th year of the captivity of Joachim, king of Judah, the 12th month, on the 25th day of the month, the evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the first year of his reign, lifted up his head to Joachim, king of Judah, and brought him out of prison. So where was Joachim? He was in prison. And he spoke kindly to him and gave him a more prominent seat than those of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Joachim changed from his prison garments, and he ate bread regularly before the king all the days of his life. And as for his provisions, there was a regular ration given him by the king of Babylon, a portion for each day until the day of his death, all the days of his life. So patience is the key to the law of stewardship. In Jeremiah, we read that Joachim waited 37 years. Do you know what the name Joachim means? Anybody? Preparation. What does Greg say? Preparation time is never wasted time. So you need to steward the season that you're in. How you steward this season will dictate the success of the next season. Is there something in the area of finances that you've been waiting for? Yeah, I've been waiting for that blessing to just drop on me like ripe cherries. No, there's other things. You exercise patience by conditioning your mind and staying prepared while you wait. Conditioning your mind and staying prepared while you wait. Steward the season you're in. God uses your relationships to get you connected to your purpose. There may be relationships that were back from your growing up days that you didn't really think about. And those relationships may come back around. They give you that little bit of insight. How many of y'all listen to country music? Okay. How many of you know who Dan and Shay? Anybody? Who's it? Dan and Shay. They just won 3 awards at the American Country Music Awards. Shay's dad was Caleb's first baseball coach. Caleb and Shay Mooney played, what was it? T-ball together. We had no clue at that moment that Shay would go on to become what he is today. I'm not saying that that's leading anywhere, but that's a relationship that at the time we had no clue. You never know where those people will end up. That will open a door for you that would otherwise not be open. Steward the season you're in. When I operate the law of stewardship, I take value to the marketplace and become a valuable steward. Again, I wish this said, how can you do your part so that God can do his part? Because I don't think it's a half and half. I think it's you have a part to play and he has a part to play. In what areas do you feel you could be a better steward? This is the one you need to write down, because this is where the Holy Spirit's saying you need to become a better steward in this area or that area. And it's different for each one of you. And it's different for this point in time in your life. Once you put yourself in the position to start building wealth, there are 9 laws you can follow to take you all the way there. The first 4 are called God's laws. We just went over those. They specifically have to do with partnering with God. The law of change, the law of wisdom, the law of connection, the law of stewardship. Now I'm going to go on to the earth's laws. The earth's laws are still God's laws in a sense because he created them. He embedded them into the way the world works. The 5 laws specifically have to do with how money and investing work in the earth. The first law is the law of conversion. I'm not going to read Deuteronomy 8:18 again. Wealth creation. Wealth is created when assets move from a lower to higher valued assets. That's a quote from Managerial Economics. Remember Billy's grandson with the broken red wagon for $2? Replaced the wheel, painted it, sold it for 20. took a lower valued asset, moved it to a higher value. The one lesson of business is the art of business consists of identifying assets in low valued uses and devising a way to profitably move them to higher valued ones. Remember the iron. So the block of iron was worth $5. You made something different out of it. Depending on what you made, it moved into a higher value. So Billy gives the example. He was teaching this one time about conversion, and he had a young man come up and said, my dad needs to come here and tell you this story. So the dad comes up and he says, several years ago, my son, we live on a farm and all this, and all the kids around were getting motorbikes. So the son said, I want a motorbike. I want a motorbike, Dad. Give me a motorbike. Everybody else has one. Give me a motorbike. Dad says, well, I'm not going to give you a motorbike, but I'll buy you a cow. It's like, what am I going to do with a cow? I can't ride a cow. And so, well, I'm not just going to buy you a cow. I'm going to buy you a pregnant cow. Okay. So the cow, he bought him a cow, same amount the motorbike cost. But the cow was pregnant, but it was pregnant with twins, or two cows. So he fed one of those cows, sold it, and bought the motorbike. Now he's got a motorbike, a cow, and a calf. So rather than purchase the dirt bike with the earned income, he purchased the cow that increased in value by producing calves that was sold to pay for the dirt bike. Then you have a dirt bike, a depreciating asset, a cow, an appreciating asset, and calves to sell, income. That's the law of conversion. So if you need something, think of not how much money do I have, can I afford it? Think of how can I afford it with what I have. Go buy a cow, a pregnant cow. Law of compounding. Albert Einstein called compound interest the most powerful invention of the 20th century. All compounding is making money on your money. If you put $1,000 in the bank and you earn 10% interest, how much money do you have? At the end of the year, you have $1,100. Now, for the year 2, if you earn 10% on your money, you have $1,210. So you earn 10% on the original 1,000 and you earn 10% on the interest from the first year. And you keep going. So the rule of 72 says if you divide any interest rate by 72, the answer, it takes that many years for your money to double at that interest rate. For example, if you invest your money at 3%, it's going to take you 24 years to double your money. But if you take that same money and invest it at 24%, it will only take you 3 years. That's the law of compound interest or compounding. So you're also looking for something that will compound, where you are earning money on your money. You can take the example of the cow and the calves. The cow had 2 calves, sold one, got the income, but kept the second one. Now you've got 2 cows that can produce calves. So all of a sudden, you're earning money on the calf, which could have been an income, but instead became an asset to produce more income. Next law is the law of income. The law of income. It's fruits versus vegetables. If I eat an apple off my apple tree, I partake of the fruit, or I got income from the tree. That's buying and renting. If I eat a vegetable from my garden, I have to pull it out of the ground to partake. In order to partake a second time, I need to replant. That's buying and selling. What would you rather have? Fruit or a vegetable? Not saying vegetables are wrong, we need them, but just understand that fruits represent the law of income. It's going to continue to produce. My cow is going to continue to have calves. So income without selling is stock versus real estate. So to receive the benefit of a stock, you have to sell it. Whereas if you have real estate, you can rent it. So become income oriented first. Real estate with positive cash flow meets this criteria. Appreciation is secondary. In other words, if you buy something like that Corvette we talked about and it goes up in value, that's still a good thing. It's just not as easy to eat off of that because you still have to sell it. But it's worth a whole lot more than when you first bought it. So the first thing you want to do is try to replace employment income with some type of reoccurring income stream, like rent from real estate. We got 33 seconds, so we're going to finish the rest of the laws after the break. Did you get something out of this? All right, go get yourself some fruit.